Judge Greg Mathis, I have been waiting on this for a very long time because I like people, and I think your fans like people who are originals. There's nobody else like you. And we can start with your story, which I think a lot of people know about. You've talked about it a lot, you've talked about it from the bench. So I want to know if when you are sitting on the bench and you come across, I would guess, a good number of young men who have some of you, reflect some of what you went through. Was it ever a struggle to dish out empathy, compassion, but at the same time come up against statutes and sentences? What's the struggle there, if any, for you?
Yes, when I was elected judge in Detroit and was a sitting judge, I was still relatively young, early 30s, youngest judge to be elected in
Wow.
Michigan 15 years after leaving jail. And that's how Hollywood came calling and I came to television. But those 5 years that I sat on the bench were perhaps the most stressful, other than the years they denied me my law license.
Yeah,
It
sure.
became the most stressful part of my career because indeed, as you say, I had to sympathize with the families who had been victimized or lost loved ones. And then I had to understand the circumstances in which some of these young people came from because I'd come from those circumstances. And the majority of the people that I grew up with came from those circumstances, crime and drug ridden communities with failed education systems and disorganized households afflicted with drugs and alcoholism. And so, knowing and having then to raise themselves on the streets in many instances. And so that conflict did trouble me. Having to sentence some young men engaged in violent attacks, murders, that was, yes, very troubling. And so that's why I was glad to get to television, to be honest, so I could just have some fun and spread some wisdom.
Have you ever had somebody that you had to sentence, give a harsh sentence to, maybe judge, reach back out to you and say, look, you changed my life. Maybe I didn't appreciate it then, but you changed my life.
Yes, many. Let me first give you a little anecdote you'll like, and that is my first 6 months on the bench, I had at least two friends from the neighborhood come before
Oh,
me.
no.
One was a crack addict, and I asked the prosecutor and the defense lawyer if they mind. I didn't have to recuse myself, and they didn't request that. So I was able to sentence a friend of a lifelong associate to drug rehab. And that brought me joy. On the other hand, another associate they brought before me, they caught him uh, trying to go in the trunk, trying to get into Mexico
No.
after being convicted of selling over kilos of
Oh,
cocaine.
goodness.
And so he came before me as an escapee for the most part and wanted a bond. Of course, I couldn't give him a bond, but that was interesting that a second one had come. But I have a young lady who I'm most proud of. She's now a judge. And quite frankly, I don't remember her. She said that I sentenced her to get her GED as the judge sentenced me. That's kind of where I learned that second chance from because I got one. And she said I inspired her. And she went on to get her GED. She followed the same path as I and got her law degree and ran. I helped her run for judge
Wow.
recently, and she won in Detroit.
So, see, you gave her the blueprint, Judge, and she took it, took the opportunity, and ran with it. And I'm sure others have followed that blueprint. Authenticity. I've done television for a long time, not at your level, but I did get good advice, I think, early on, and it gave me room to breathe and say, you know what, I don't need to be perfect, but I do need to be me. And I think people at home relate to that when you're not doing this put on thing or this put on voice or preaching to people. And that, to me, is the beauty of you. And so when you crossed over into television, I don't know Judge Mathis before that. That was our introduction to you. But I wonder if you had, because Hollywood gets a hold of people, Judge, and people from the neighborhood don't remember them. Okay, they don't recognize them. So how did you do it and still remain you?
Well, I tell people I'm the exact same person that I was even as a street kid. I'm just not a criminal anymore. But I have the same personality, the same ethics, if you will, and that is loyal to your family, loyal to your community. Believe it or not, as much as folks like to criticize and stereotype Black men about their care for their families, they care very much for their families. And so that's what I learned, and that's how I've been all the majority of my adult life. I've been the same person. And I go back to the neighborhood. First year I was on television, we built a 10,000 square foot Mathis Community Center in Detroit. So I'm there often when I'm in Detroit. I'll be there this weekend, where we provide services. We have job fairs. We have expungement fairs, many things we do. So I've never really left the community. I view Los Angeles, where I spend most of the time, as a vacation area because most of my work is done in Chicago and Detroit, who need me most.
You mentioned your family, and it's just one more layer of I think it's beautiful. And your wife, that relationship, I've met you before, but I feel like we got to know her through that reality show that you did. And I want to know more about how you met, because you talk about your past, and sure, you went to college, but her parents ended up loving you. She obviously loves you. Any insecurity or just full embrace when you and the family met?
It's deeper than that with regard to her household. When I met her, I was going through a transition from street to college. I was a college kid my second year, and I was still hustling on campus, selling joints, whatever I could do. I had no parent. Both of my parents had died, or my mother had died, never had a father in my life. And so I was still a teenager when my mom died on my own. And so I didn't do any hardcore crimes like I was when I was living in Detroit and running with the street gangs. But yeah, I did a little hustling and primarily selling joints on campus. And believe it or not, flipping 3-card money. and that's where my wife met me.
Well, all right.
I was on campus flipping 3-card money. And then later I hit on her. And she was like, "What are you doing up here? We don't have thugs up here." "No, I'm not talking to you." And then I said, "I'm up here like you are. I'm getting an education. I'm doing well." And so I think she was a little fascinated by that because I still had the street persona. And she was a square suburban young lady. And when we began to date, her parents accepted me. And the reason I say it's deeper than the gloss over of her parents embracing me is the fact that they actually allowed me to stay in a room in their home during the holidays when I wasn't staying with my brothers who were running a crack house.
Oh, wow.
So during the holidays, I'd stay there. And what I saw was the first time I saw a solid and a intact Black family, middle-class family. Folks don't believe me when I say I had never encountered that. I'd grown up in the streets of Detroit in the toughest housing projects in Detroit. Only probably 20% had fathers. And of those, many of them were drug and alcohol addicted. So I'd never seen that. And so I tell my father-in-law all the time, and I make sure that their life is comfortable now, that they taught me fatherhood. He taught me fatherhood. He taught me family. And so I give a great deal of respect and credit to my wife and her family. Lastly, with regard to my wife, that's what really changed me ultimately. She said, "Okay, I know you got to do a little hustling to get through, but no, you're going to have to stop this if you want to be with me." So I lived as a pauper for my last 3 years in college. But
well, look at you now.
I met her expectations and her family, I believe.
Yeah, it's just such an incredible story, a real story. I mentioned the reality show, and I when I first stumbled upon it, I really just stumbled upon it. And of course, being a fan, others I've heard from started watching, and we said, why didn't he do this sooner? Because what you've displayed, much as you've described your in-laws and the life that they allowed you to enter into with them, it's incredible. And one of the things that's touched so many and you hear from so many about is your transparency, the love. One of your sons is gay, out, beautiful, strong. And what I loved about it was it's just a family, a beautiful family. And coming from where you come from, that's not always the case, this love and acceptance. And I don't know if there was another journey there, but it came across that screen and it really, really resonated with people.
Well, I have adhered to the call of family first. I've had significant opportunities that would have met a couple of the other lifetime goals I had, and in a way I have, but not significantly. And in the earlier years, while on television, which we only tape 6 days a week, a year. I'm sorry, a month, leaves me a lot of other time for other things. I was nominated president of FCLC. I was trained in politics and in civil rights, mentored by Reverend Jackson and the mayor of Detroit, Mayor Coleman Young. And so they prepared me, and I was looking on a career in politics before I came to television. Once coming to television, I was also working closely with Reverend Jackson, as I do now as chairman of Rainbow Push. And I had the opportunity to do that, and it came down to the numbers. It came down to the numbers that you tape 6 times a month. If you're head of a national civil rights organization, you'll be on the road another 18 days of the month, because weekends you're speaking all around the country. You're going to attend to civil rights issues throughout the country. And so I had to choose between that and my family. And it was the ultimate sacrifice, because that had been a lifelong dream. But I said I would only see my family 6 days a month. And it was more important to me to have a cohesive, solid, and loving family than to go throughout the country trying to save others. I'm sorry. Dr. King gave his life, and others gave up their families. Most don't have cohesive families, our major civil rights leaders. But I wasn't willing to sacrifice that because of the joy it brought me and because of the benefit it would have on my family. And as you see, that has helped our family to progress, me being present in the home and very active with them.
I want to switch gears. I know we don't have too much time. I don't want to hold up all your time, but the show, when I learned the show wasn't coming back, this hit show, for what? Yeah, they have their own reasons and number crunching or whatever they're trying to do, heartbroken. But then you and Byron Allen got together, your friend, you formed a business relationship here. And I want to know, because it was like it didn't miss a beat. The show was back and better than ever. So I want to know what that phone call was like and what the relationship is like. Tell us.
Well, let me just suggest to you that Byron and I have been friends. He's kind of wanted me on his network for some time now. And when Warner Brothers gave me 2 hours notice before it went to the media, 2 weeks before we were to resume taping, they canceled the show. Um, and it's the new CEO. He canceled People's Court as well. It's not just me. However, the way it was mishandled after I'd been with them 24 years, I think I'm resentful of. And so Byron calls me once he reads about it in the paper the same night. He says, "Hey, Judge, I couldn't call you and tell you, but they were," and perhaps I'm disclosing too much, but I'll just say that they were trying to sell my reruns, all while telling me that we were going to be back that year. And
Wow.
so he suggested that if we could come to a conclusion by that following week, he would go back to the stations and say, do you want rerun Mathis or you want new Mathis?
I
So we
love it.
came together and we whooped that giant, and now folks have new Mathis.
And how important is the way Byron, because he's got a philosophy with his, he really wants to take over the world, it seems. And it seems good for us. It seems good representation. And I look forward to more. What does he mean to the television landscape today?
Well, and to our society in general. He's one of the great media um, executives, I think, of modern times. Being an African American man that could build an empire, 27 television stations around the country, 6 cable networks, 12 judge or 10 judge shows, etc. Go on and on. Griot, which is appealing to the African American audience in an effort to uplift and educate our community. We've never had anyone like him, and I'm very appreciative of his efforts. He has, and he walks the walk. I mean, he has sued other stations and other cable groups for discrimination and won. He's taken lawsuits up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and so he's not afraid to fight back. And I'm glad I'm with a fighter, because that's who I am.
Will you keep telling stories, Judge? I know 50 Cent wasn't happy when you were part of a project, and that didn't deter you. It didn't stop it. So I wonder if you'll keep telling more stories and still speak truth to power.
Absolutely. We have a movie coming out, a television movie on BET Plus again, about a transgender Black woman who was abused as a child and got involved in criminal activity, went to prison, was abused in prison, and now has come out working within the transgender community to fight against the oppression and attacks against them. And so we have another, what I call, cautionary tale with an inspirational ending television movie based on our successful series, Trap Queens.
Wow. Well, we love you. You are a hero to us. We thank you for the time you took. I think I asked you pretty much everything. Maybe not about Cat Williams blowing up the universe. I suspect you wouldn't be afraid of him either. You'd laugh with him.
I got to tell you on that last note, my buddy Anthony Anderson, he just happened to be texting me. He's out of the country filming. And so, what's up? You know, we talk whatever little junk. I said, yeah. Cat Williams said you didn't steal his jokes. He said you stole his woman. So he's warning every man to keep them.
Wow.
Keep your woman away. I loved it. He's the funniest guy in the world. And really that was funny.
It was funny. Everything he said, Judge, I think.
I don't know if it was true, but it was funny.
It was funny. Okay. And it is what it is. He's going to be one of those people that speaks the truth, too. Well, we love you, Judge. I hope this won't be our last sit down. Thank you for everything you do and keep doing. Thank you so much, Judge Mathis.
I appreciate your support.